When I met Cleo Barnwell, she was no exception. She was very much someone I was immediately impressed with as having a very keen intellect, tremendous energy and personal drive. And she had this willingness to act on her interests and not hold back, which I found rather astonishing. She was, when you consider that she was born in the beginning of the 20th century, 1905, and when the convention for the role of most women would have been that of a mother and housewife, she certainly accepted that role gladly, but she also created for herself during her life other roles that were outside of the home. And this afternoon, what I want to do is sort of lead you through a little bit about her life personally, and then show you some of her activities that were somewhat outstanding. Cleo was born in East Texas, in Quezon, Texas, in 1905. Her father was a cattle broker and worked in real estate. So this is a clip from the 1910 census. I better put my glasses on. So it shows her living with her parents and her sister Mildred in Quezon. Then in the 1930 federal census, we see her living in Wink, Texas, which I believe was an oil boom town. And she was married to William Alonzo Barnwell, and she had an infant son, William Jr. And her husband built oil rigs, so they were always living where there was oil operations. In 1940, they were living in Henderson, Texas. The first evidence I found of Cleo living in, Cleo and Lonnie, as she called him, living in Shreveport, was in the Shreveport City Directory in 1945. And they were living not far from here on Archer Avenue, just off Kings Highway, where she lived for 60 years. Actually, she died there. Cleo had an interest in retail. She had a dress shop right across the street from Centenary on Kings Highway, which she had for, I believe, 15 years. She also was very engaged in women's clubs in Shreveport. It was a real activity for her. She had always been a voracious reader. She told me that as a child she read all the books in the local library in the small town she grew up in, and she had to search afar for books to satisfy her reading habit. So she became a very popular book reviewer. So mostly the book reviews she gave through the 1940s, 50s, 60s, 70s, into the 80s were at other women's clubs here in Shreveport and actually other areas or in Louisiana. She developed an interest in wildflowers and gardening, which led her to work with the Shreveport Beautification Foundation. She was involved with the planning of the Barnwell Center downtown on the riverfront, and ultimately she became friends with Caroline Dorman and was involved with the Caroline Dorman Nature Preserve in Natchitoches Parish. She also had relationships with gardeners across the U.S. and some abroad. Late, I'm not sure exactly when she became interested in old garden roses. It was probably in the 50s or 60s. She was very keen on introducing or reintroducing roses that were antique or heirloom roses, if you will, that had fallen out of commerce, and she was very interested in getting them back into commerce. She was a founding member of the Shreveport Rose Society in 1962, and she was instrumental in creating an old garden rose garden at the American Rose Society Center in Greenwood. Whoops. Sorry. This is an entry from the 1956 City Directory listing her dress shop on Kings Highway. And down at the bottom you see, if you can see that, their residence at 111 Archer Avenue. A newspaper ad for her dress store. Her sister Mildred worked with her in the dress store. I think her sister Mildred was a seamstress and maybe altered dresses and maybe designed dresses. Another newspaper ad. I added those pictures. In her club work, she was the first mention I found of her being involved in a club was the Broadmoor Methodist Church Mothers Club, class club that she participated in. And she was involved in the Delphi Study Club. And she was also a very active member in the Shreveport Women's Department Club. And those of us may have grown up with grandmothers who were very active in women's club movement in the 30s, 40s, 50s, into the 60s. And I think Cleo was not able to go to college. I think she wanted to, but she told me one time that her father's business had a downturn right when she was ready to go to school, and she was unable to, and then she married and had a child. And I think the women's club work was a way she could further her education, and that was really the aim of it, along with philanthropy. So if you're looking through the newspaper archives, and these are from 1948, I think all of them are, well, one's from 51. You'll see a mention of book reviews. The first one that says Opti-Ms Club, whatever that was. She was the luncheon speaker there, and she spoke, the title of her talk was Clothes Reflect, well, she gave a talk on clothing and the women's clothing market. She says, clothes reflect yesterday, mirror today, and predict tomorrow. I think she...
Wait, say that again.
She said, clothes reflect yesterday, mirror today, and predict tomorrow. I think one thing about Cleo that was very noticeable is that she was a woman of conviction. So she had very strong ideas about a variety of things. And I think, you know, she never told me why she opened this dress store, but I think probably, well, her son, she opened the store in 48. Her son would have been 18, so he would have been going to college. And she would have been free to do what she wanted to, more or less. And I think she wanted to get out of the house. And I think she also had very definite ideas about women's fashion. So she wanted to kind of create her mark. And she also told me, and this is another glimpse into her character, that she was very aware that there were girls at Centenary who didn't have the means to buy a nice dress for a formal occasion. So she made it known to the administration there that she would furnish a dress to a student if they were in need. So she was a very generous person in that respect.